Welcome. Let's take a look now at some of the events to watch out for on Wednesday, the 25th of January. And I want to begin overnight at 12:30 a.m. to be precise, where we get the trimmed mean CPI, expected to rise by a margin of 1.5% in the fourth quarter, year on year, down from the 1.8% increase of the previous quarter. Now, let's assume that the risk is on the downside. And this could lead us into a better position so far as Australian interest rates are concerned. And if the central bank is not expected to raise as much or as fast as had previously been the case, it could be good news for the Australian ASX 200. Let's take a look at the chart. On the daily basis, you can see here from the lows that we had where we saw that drop down to the recent lows on the 30th of September, we've seen a rise of 17.1% so far. Now, this potentially could be good news for this index. And if we see it rise towards the highs that we had all the way back up here on the 5th of January, we will be then within a hair's breadth of going into bull market for the Australian ASX 200. The problem is if, of course, this trimmed mean CPI does come in far stronger than expected, and that could then mean the reverse for this, in which case you'd be a seller of this market going into the number. You really do have to know your Australian economic data to work out the best way to go, but certainly the Australian ASX 200 is on a rip at the moment, and the trend seems to be on the way up. Let's look at some of the other data to watch out for. In Germany, we get the 9 a.m. release of the IFO business climate number for January. Expectations are there for a read of 90.2 after 88.6 in December. Now, this looking as though it could well be another one where we could get a risk potentially for this number, and that would be a good opportunity to trade euro dollar. If the number comes in stronger than expected, then obviously you'll presumably be wanting to buy euro dollar on expectations that the European Central Bank is then going to be more aggressive than they have been on interest rates. It certainly looks as though the euro is going to win out over the US dollar because of the fact that we've still got interest rate rises to come, and possibly at pace for the ECB. And so there is a potential for further upside here for the euro against the US dollar. Currently trading at 108.60. If you are long on this trade going into the numbers tomorrow, your stop goes down here under this level that we've seen here, drawing that down at 107.66. So your stop loss would be at 107.50 if you're long on this going into that number out tomorrow. Also, we get the Bank of Canada interest rate decision tomorrow. The market anticipation is for a 25 basis point interest rate rise, but that would take the base overnight rate to 4.5%, and it certainly would be worth looking at the cross involved in the Canadian dollar. This is the US dollar trading against the Canadian, and you can see that we've got this market dropping. This is the US dollar falling against that stronger Canadian dollar. Much of that, of course, is to do with the dollar weakness as much as the Canadian strength. But I think if we do get something of an outlier, possibly an opportunity here to continue to sell this market, depending on what the result looks like in terms of the outcome of that meeting and the statement. Then at 3:30 in the afternoon, we get EIA crude oil inventories on from the API number out late on Tuesday. Now, let's take a look at some of the other stories worth watching. EasyJet, first quarter trading statement, we get that number coming through. There's an interesting inverted head and shoulders coming through on EasyJet, which I'll follow up on tomorrow morning on the early morning call. Hope you can join me there for that as we dissect the numbers coming through on that trading statement from the discount airline. We've also got a second quarter trading statement from JD Wetherspoon, including that all-important Christmas period for the company, and Tullow Oil as well. Big company which explores oil in Central Africa. It too is on a trading statement. Let's take a look at what's happening on the European continent. In Europe, we get ASML Holdings on fourth quarter numbers. This is the semiconductor equipment manufacturer, so it makes the machines that makes the semiconductors, and it's this early demand that gives us a steer on the main semiconductor sector, so we'll be watching that as well as an interesting number to bear in mind on Wednesday morning. Then later on in the day, before the US markets get underway, we got fiscal fourth quarter numbers coming through from Boeing, a ticker BA. Boeing is one of these companies that trades all sessions. It means you can trade it when the numbers come through. There's the long-term chart. Let's take a look at what's happening on the daily chart. And you can see here I've drawn this line of support at 204.60. And if you're long going into these numbers, you'd want to put your stop underneath this area down here at around about the $204 level. 209.20 is where we are at the moment. So that is, if you go long on this and your stop goes in that area down there if you believe the numbers could well come through better than expected. And we certainly have seen some positive numbers coming through from some of these airlines, which indicates that they are continuing to use their aircraft more and more as people come back into the overall holiday and business flying picture. So that's Boeing. Let's take a look at another one worth watching tomorrow, and that's Tesla. Fourth quarter earnings after the bell, after Wall Street closes. This is another stock which is all sessions on the IG platform. You can see the direction of travel there on that weekly chart. But if we look at what's been happening in terms of the daily chart, there's a nice little uptick that is beginning to take shape there from the bottom that we had in this market on the 6th of January. We have so far risen 44.36%. Look, we're down today, all sessions, but nonetheless, this is going to be an interesting read tomorrow when we get these numbers come through. That rise in terms of percentages, you can see clearly we've lost a lot of value here. From the record highs we had back in November 2021, we've lost a whopping 75.6% in terms of value. So in the context, that's not a particularly large rise. And indeed, this could just be a retracement. Maybe possibly some might be trading on that idea that it might be worth looking at getting a short position somewhat higher than where we are at the moment. If you use a Fibonacci tool, you take your high from the top on the 1st of December down to that low, and you work out, and that kicks in at around about the 1700 level, 16800 or so, and then you want to take a short position there. It depends very much on what Tesla says. It's also up, as you can see here, up against this green line here, which is the 50-period moving average, simple moving average, which could act as a little bit of a break on any upside travel from here where we are. But that earnings number coming out after the bell tomorrow evening, Wednesday, the 25th of January. Let's take a look as well at some of the other companies, just quickly run through some of the other figures worth watching. IBM, fourth quarter numbers out after the bell. AT&T ditto on its fourth quarter figure. And before the bell, we get Levi Strauss on its fourth quarter numbers. That's coming up on Wednesday, the 25th of January. For more videos from us here at IGTV, join us on Twitter at IGCom, Instagram, and subscribe to our YouTube channel.